Hey, everyone! Your go-to source for all things mysterious and supernatural. And today we're diving headfirst into the world of skinwalkers. Skinwalkers have been a subject of fascination and dread for centuries, deeply rooted in Native American folklore. These enigmatic beings have the power to shape-shift into animals and humans, and their stories have haunted the American Southwest for generations. In this special episode, we're unmasking the Skinwalker mystery with a collection of hair-raising stories that will send chills down your spine. From eerie encounters in the dead of night to spine-tingling transformations, get ready to explore the dark and mysterious world of these cryptid creatures.
The night draped upstate New York in an eerie silence. I lay in bed, my senses alert to the subtle sounds of the night. The hum of the air conditioner at the window's end was a soothing lullaby, and my faithful cat, Hudson, perched on the sill, casting a vigilant eye over the outside world. Little did I know that this seemingly tranquil evening would unfurl into a chilling encounter that would forever etch itself into my memory. The clock's hands crept towards 1 a.m. when the inexplicable occurred. I had temporarily forgotten that the window screen had been removed to accommodate the air conditioner. Hudson, true to his feline curiosity, had leaped onto the open window ledge. As he settled there, a sudden cacophony of hissing and screeching shattered the serenity. I leaped from my bed, desperately trying to summon him back inside, assuming that he had encountered some nocturnal intruder, perhaps a raccoon. However, my urgency escalated as I watched my beloved cat tumble out of the window, his screeches taking on a frantic quality I had never heard before. Fear and adrenaline coursed through me as I raced to my brother's room, seeking his help in retrieving Hudson. The fear of the dark, a long-standing phobia of mine, faded into insignificance in that moment. With my flashlight in hand, I darted out the door, the beam slicing through the obsidian night. My heart raced as I arrived at the side of the house where my window faced the darkness. As the flashlight's radiance pierced the night, my heart constricted in terror. What had appeared to be a routine feline escapade was something far more sinister. There, before my disbelieving eyes, stood an entity that defied comprehension. A towering figure, stretching to a height of 7 to 8 feet, clung to the wall of my house, grasping onto the windowsill with its elongated limbs. A palpable sense of malevolence emanated from this grotesque intruder. One of its gnarled back legs pressed against the house, while its front appendages gripped the windowsill. When it sensed the intrusion of my flashlight's beam, it turned its head, revealing bloodshot eyes that glowed a malevolent crimson. Those eyes ensnared me, a hypnotic and paralyzing force that rendered me motionless. With deliberate intent, the monstrous figure relinquished its hold on my house and began a swift, uncanny descent towards the field nearby. As it moved, it became clear that this entity was no ordinary creature. It remained upright on its hind legs, defying the laws of nature, and its limbs dangled in a grotesque manner, swaying close to its knees. My brother, positioned in the front of the house, continued to search for our missing feline companion. I retrieved him hastily, an adrenaline surge propelling me forward. At that moment, I had not fully processed the enormity of what I had witnessed. As we approached the field, a sense of unease hung heavily in the air. To our bewilderment, the field bore no trace of Hudson or the enigmatic intruder. Silence enveloped us as we returned to the front of the house, our steps faltering in unison. There, beneath the dim moonlight, the trees and bushes flanked the house, their branches rustling ominously. Then, the night unleashed a tormenting shriek that reverberated through the air, an agonizing wail that seemed to rend the very fabric of reality. In an instant, my brother and I abandoned all pretense of courage, fleeing back towards the safety of our home. The gut feeling that had begun as a gnawing unease had morphed into a gnashing terror. It was a sensation I had never known before, a primal intuition that we were not alone and that danger loomed. As we locked the door behind us, the realization dawned that the night was fraught with peril, and my brother's safety was paramount. I hurriedly made my way to the back porch's sliding door, peering outside. There, waiting at the threshold, was Hudson, his typically aloof demeanor replaced by one of sheer terror. His once sleek tail now resembled a bushy plume, and his trembling form conveyed the trauma of his encounter. He darted inside, seeking refuge far from the windows and doors, his fear palpable. The events of that night remained etched in my psyche, a haunting tableau that defied reason. Nightmares plagued my sleep, and the memory of those crimson eyes lingered, an indelible mark upon my consciousness. It took time to process and analyze the enigma I had witnessed. The closest approximation was a Wendigo, a creature of myth and terror. Living in close proximity to what was purportedly Wendigo territory in New York lent an eerie credence to the encounter. The memory of that night, with its inexplicable entity, continued to send shivers down my spine. I had ventured into the realm of the inexplicable, where terror took on a form that transcended reality, and the line between the known and the unknowable blurred. Nestled in the heart of the dense woods, my house stood as an isolated sanctuary surrounded by towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. My only neighbors were a kind, elderly couple who resided just down the hill. The other neighbor, hidden miles away, dwelled deep within the woods, a mysterious presence veiled by the forest's shroud. As twilight enveloped my trailer home, an unsettling sense of unease often gripped me. The nocturnal hours brought with them an eerie ambience that shrouded my surroundings, feeding my imagination with phantoms and unseen terrors. But this story, this chilling tale, unfolds in the stark light of day, rendering it all the more unsettling. My son, a mere 7 months old, yearned for the embrace of the natural world, to inhale the crisp, untainted air and bask in the warm embrace of the sun. It was a day like any other, and as fate would have it, I found myself alone with him. The rest of the household was scattered, each ensnared by the demands of work and daily life. My son and I retreated to the porch, nestled comfortably on the weathered stairs. The clock chimed the hour, marking it as 1 in the afternoon, bathed in the gentle radiance of late spring or early summer. Cradling him in my lap, I reveled in the simplicity of the moment, his cherubic face a canvas of curiosity as I guided his gaze towards the lush tapestry of green that enveloped us. For a brief interlude, tranquility reigned supreme. Yet, as if summoned by some malevolent force, the serenity was shattered. From the depths of the woods behind my abode, a child's anguished cry sliced through the air, echoing relentlessly. My heart, in perfect synchrony with my son's rapid breaths, surged with a primal instinct to protect. An involuntary hush enveloped me, a veil of silence in the face of the unknown. With a swift, almost mechanical motion, I rose from my seat, eyes trained on the dense woods before me. Could it be that my neighbor's grandchildren had ventured into the forest, their play disrupted by some unforeseen misfortune? Dread gripped me as the realization washed over me. My neighbors were not at home. My anxiety mounted as I contemplated the implications of a lone child, seemingly abandoned in the woods. The dissonance of the situation gnawed at my core. But the nightmarish saga was far from over. Just as I pondered my next move, the forest whispered, revealing yet another layer of its chilling secrets. A little girl's voice, tremulous and laden with terror, pierced the air, beseeching assistance with a desperation that clawed at my soul. Completely unhinged, I reached for my lifeline, my sister. Clutching my baby with one arm, the other cradling my phone, I frantically dialed her number. Seconds stretched into eternity before her voice filled my ear, a lifeline in the abyss. With urgency, I relayed the cacophonous symphony of distress that had engulfed me, the initial scream, the haunting plea for help, and the disquieting silence that followed. Panic wrestled with reason as I awaited her guidance. "I know we have neighbors in the woods a few miles from the house," I stammered, struggling to make sense of the situation. "But why the hell would there be a child all alone in the woods screaming like that? It's pretty far away from their place to be messing around with me over here." My sister, undoubtedly perturbed by my frantic demeanor, offered a semblance of reassurance. She urged me to return indoors to shield myself and my child from the enigmatic horrors that lurked beyond the threshold. Her voice, though steady, bore the weight of trepidation. As I reluctantly pondered her counsel, an uncanny mirth invaded the woods. Laughter, raucous and undeniably childlike, cascaded from the heart of the forest. 2 or 3 voices, their gaiety disturbingly proximate, reverberated through the trees. It was as though mischievous specters had emerged from the shadows, concealing themselves within the tree line where the forest's depths began. Anxiety coursed through my veins as I strained to comprehend the surreal tableau unfolding before me. I implored my sister in a trembling voice to discern the cacophony that had gripped my world. But my sister heard nothing. The laughter, the cries, the very essence of that surreal moment eluded her senses. Her words, while filled with genuine concern, offered no concrete solution. Once again, I found myself ensnared in the chilling embrace of the unknown. It was then that I turned to my best friend, a confidant who had weathered countless storms with me. With trembling hands, I dispatched a voice message, my voice laced with a desperation that bordered on madness. Her reply, a stark echo of my sister's counsel, offered no solace. "Go inside, stay there," she implored, a gravity in her voice that chilled me to the bone. "Something is trying to lure you in there." Yet, foolishly, I remained on the precipice of terror, poised to capture evidence of the enigma that had ensnared me. My phone became a vessel through which I relayed my torment to my friend, transmitting videos that detailed the disconcerting sounds that surrounded me, the screams, the laughter, and the inexplicable. And then the forest unveiled yet another enigmatic player in this macabre drama. A colossal hawk emerged from the shadowed recesses of the woods, embarking on an eerie pilgrimage towards a towering oak that adorned my front yard. Perched on a sturdy branch, it fixed its piercing gaze upon me, a spectral sentinel. My phone, now an instrument of documentation, recorded the bird's descent, capturing its unyielding scrutiny. With a sense of dread, I transmitted the footage to my friend, who responded with a voice message laden with unspoken truths. Her boyfriend, indigenous and attuned to the mystic tapestry of the natural world, discerned the signs that eluded me. His counsel, delivered through the conduit of my friend, was unequivocal: retreat to the safety of my domicile. It was a command tinged with the wisdom of generations, resonating with an urgency that transcended the boundaries of the known. For 5 interminable minutes, the hawk and I engaged in a chilling standoff. Its unrelenting gaze, infused with an unnatural sentience, bore into my soul, laying bare the depths of my fear. And then, as abruptly as it had appeared, it took flight, vanishing into the boundless expanse of the sky. With trembling limbs and a heart laden with disquiet, I heeded the counsel of those who recognized the peril that lurked in the shadows. I retreated indoors, where the walls offered a frail bulwark against the enigma that had besieged me. My mind a whirlwind of disbelief, and trepidation sought refuge in the comforting embraces of denial. I scoffed at the notion of skinwalkers, dismissing it as the stuff of superstition. Yet the unanswered questions loomed large. Why were children playing deep within the woods, and how had they sensed our presence? Were they watching us, their motives concealed by the sinister veil of the forest? As the days passed, the specter of that harrowing encounter continued to haunt me. It festered in the recesses of my consciousness, a festering wound that defied reason and rationality. And, as fate would have it, a revelation arrived, casting a sinister pall over my fragile sense of security. A mere week and a half after the inexplicable events in the woods, my friend divulged a bone-chilling truth. Her boyfriend's father had heard whispers, murmurs carried on the wind, of sightings of skinwalkers on the reservation. The accounts, numerous and disquieting, painted a portrait of malevolent entities that defied the laws of the natural world. Her counsel, now tinged with an urgency that mirrored the gravity of the situation, was stark and unyielding. Never whistle at night, ignore the eerie machinations of the woods, and, above all, never utter the word aloud, for they would know. And they would come for us. In the crucible of that revelation, my skepticism wavered, replaced by a profound sense of foreboding. The woods, once a sanctuary, now held secrets darker than the night itself. The enigma that had unfolded that fateful day was but a prelude, a chilling harbinger of malevolent forces that lurked beyond the realm of reason. As I stood at the threshold of that unholy mystery, one truth became irrevocably clear. In the heart of the woods, the line between reality and nightmare blurred, and the shadows concealed horrors that defied comprehension. The house nestled in the heart of upstate New York had long been the silent witness to my sleep disorder, a nocturnal affliction that had haunted me since childhood. Sleepwalking, it was called, though it rarely involved the dramatic feats one might associate with such a term. Instead, it found its expression in the mundane, opening the fridge, depositing clothes in the washer without initiating the cycle, or removing the vacuum from the closet to position it in the middle of the room. As a child, this peculiar nocturnal ritual was a nightly occurrence, but as I ventured into my late 30s, it had dwindled to just an annual or semi-annual event. My native heritage had instilled in me a profound reverence for the spirits and ancestral tales passed down through generations. Many a hunting expedition had seen me huddled by the fire, engrossed in my father's narratives of the elusive Wendigo and the sinister games it played to ensnare unwitting victims. While I remained uncertain about the veracity of these stories, I exercised caution, avoiding trifling with forces beyond comprehension. Roughly 3 weeks ago, on a night much like any other, my husband and I found ourselves in the quiet aftermath of another grueling day in the construction industry. Dinner had been devoured and plans for the following day meticulously charted. Our 3 dogs, loyal companions through thick and thin, awaited their final excursion of the evening before our heads would find their pillows and our world would succumb to the embrace of sleep. Our bedroom, of decent proportions, housed a small bay window in one corner. My husband's predilection for fresh air led him to claim the side of the bed adjacent to the window. On this particular night, however, an inscrutable force shattered the tranquility. Awakened from my slumber, I found myself submerged in the cloak of darkness, the room bereft of all but the gentle cadence of northwestern rain, its rhythmic patter serving as a soothing lullaby. My senses scanned the room, but all appeared as it should be, nothing amiss, nothing awry. The sole disruption to the nocturnal serenity was the hum of my husband's box fan, a steady companion to our nights of rest. Confusion clung to my groggy consciousness as I endeavored to make sense of the disturbance. In my befuddled state, I resolved to adjust my blankets, flip my pillow, and surrender once more to the embrace of sleep. As my eyelids descended and a deep breath coursed through my body in an attempt to invoke relaxation, a voice pierced the veil of night. Babe, come out here and give me a hand with the boys." The summons, abrupt and insistent, reverberated through the room, jolting me from my drowsy haze. I struggled to orient myself, the voice a discordant note in the otherwise quiet night. A few seconds had elapsed since my rude awakening, and I grappled with the lingering fog of slumber. Slowly, I opened my eyes to the room's inky darkness, the familiar contours of our sanctuary. Rarely did one of our canine companions necessitate a nighttime excursion. Typically, should such a need arise, the dogs would venture out on their own, returning once nature's call had been answered. Our remote rural abode harbored its share of perils: bears, coyotes, cougars, and other untamed denizens of the wilderness. A careful balance between the natural world and our domestic refuge had been struck over time. Yet, the voice persisted, unperturbed by my confusion. It beckoned me to the window, its tone devoid of concern, teetering instead on the edge of annoyance. Annoyed and inquisitive, I propped myself up on a pile of blankets, peering into the inky void beyond the window's frame. The night yielded no answers, only an impenetrable veil of darkness. The floodlight, positioned on the opposing side of the house, cast no illumination upon the figure outside. My husband's summoning persisted, a disembodied call from the abyss. "Babe, come outside." It was the third iteration of that unsettling demand that shook me from my lingering stupor. Never had my husband displayed such insistence unless a genuine crisis was afoot. If the dogs were amiss, he would simply request my presence to assist in their care, offering a brief, concise explanation of the situation. Regaining my focus, I shook off the remnants of slumber. The time for hesitation had passed. I knew with a chilling clarity that something was amiss. My husband's voice had a distinct timbre, a deep, unintentional resonance honed by his Sicilian heritage. Yet, at that very moment, it was clear that what had summoned me to the window was not him. Gathering my resolve, I ventured a glance toward the window, the cold tendrils of apprehension coiling around my heart. What I beheld would forever sear itself into my memory. The blankets I had believed myself to be leaning upon, the very ones that I had sought comfort in, were not mere fabric. They breathed a rhythmic, pulsating motion that was inexplicable and otherworldly. I recoiled in sheer horror, my instincts urging me to distance myself from this grotesque aberration. Desperation coursed through my veins, and I inched closer to my sleeping husband, an island of solace in the sea of the unknown. My eyelids closed tightly, a futile attempt to deny the reality that now loomed over me. Moments like these were best relegated to the recesses of one's mind, treated as phantoms of the night to be dismissed upon the dawn's arrival. Yet, I had not heard the last of that haunting voice. The disembodied summons returned, seeping through the window's veil, a siren's call from the abyss. "Babe, come out." The very essence of the night seemed to resonate with that sinister plea, but I had resolved to ignore it. The specter outside would find no purchase in my consciousness. Instead, I turned my thoughts inward, struggling to fend off the encroaching darkness that sought to engulf my being. In the wake of that harrowing night, I shared the chilling encounter with my husband, the sleepless hours etched upon my visage. His response, delivered with a casual demeanor, belied the gravity of my revelation. "You must have had one of those creepy sleepwalking episodes again," he chuckled, dismissing my fears as the fanciful imaginings of a restless night. Yet, my sleepwalking escapades had always been shrouded in oblivion. I remembered nothing of those nocturnal journeys. No dreams, no waking, nothing. This was different. This was real, a nightmare that had unfolded with me fully awake, my senses keenly attuned to the horrors of the night. As I continued to grapple with the enigma that had besieged me, my thoughts wandered back to the tales of Wendigo spun by my father on those hunting expeditions. Were the spirits of the wild, the entities of native lore, reaching out to me? In the depths of the night, I felt their presence, their whispers woven into the shadows. A chilling truth began to take shape. Perhaps, just perhaps, a Wendigo lurked in the darkness, seeking to ensnare a soul unwise enough to heed its call. Growing up in a deeply religious and sheltered household, my parents' strict beliefs defined the boundaries of my existence. They held little tolerance for activities beyond the sanctity of our home, especially when it came to the prospect of romantic relationships. However, as I approached my 16th year, a burgeoning sense of rebellion began to stir within me, igniting a desire to challenge the constraints imposed by my family. In the hallways of my high school, I had noticed a charismatic figure named Chad. His presence exuded an aura of confidence and mischief that piqued my interest. We struck up conversations, shared laughter, and gradually kindled a connection that transcended the boundaries my parents had drawn. Despite the risks, I couldn't resist the magnetic pull I felt toward him. One fateful day, with our budding affection coursing through our veins, Chad took a bold step and asked me out. My heart fluttered with excitement, but a heavy burden of guilt and apprehension weighed me down. I knew that accepting his invitation would place me in direct defiance of my parents' religious tenets, particularly their disapproval of dating. With a heavy heart, I reluctantly declined Chad's invitation, citing the strictures of my upbringing. But as the weeks passed, my yearning for his presence eclipsed my obedience to my parents' dogma. The intoxicating allure of our connection, like a moth to the flame, pulled me further from the path my parents had laid out for me. Eventually, the magnetic pull grew too irresistible to resist. Chad and I clandestinely became a couple, our forbidden love flourishing behind the bike sheds of our school. For most teenagers, such trysts may have seemed insignificant, but for me, each stolen kiss, each secret rendezvous represented a triumphant rebellion against the chains of my upbringing. As our relationship deepened, Chad proposed an exhilarating adventure that sent a shiver of anticipation down my spine, a camping trip deep into the heart of a nearby forest. With the promise of secluded serenity and a night filled with the whispers of nature, the idea captured my imagination. Yet, beneath the veneer of excitement lay a hidden desire, one that I dared not speak aloud, even to myself. The passing months saw our love blossom, our affections growing stronger with each stolen moment together. The camping trip remained a tantalizing dream, an escape from the confines of our reality. Despite the secrecy, I couldn't suppress the hope that this adventure would be more than just a night under the stars. One evening, an unexpected opportunity presented itself. My parents informed me of their intention to visit distant relatives, a journey that would consume a significant portion of the day. The relatives resided a 3-hour drive away, and the length of their stay remained uncertain, often decided in the moment. The prospect of being left alone at home, a rarity in my sheltered existence, filled me with a rush of excitement. The camping trip, once a distant fantasy, now sprang to the forefront of my mind. The prospect of seizing this newfound freedom was irresistible. With a carefully constructed excuse about needing to complete early schoolwork, I waved my parents off with feigned enthusiasm, their pride in their diligent daughter evident on their faces. As their car disappeared into the distance, bearing my siblings and them toward their destination, I stood alone in the house, my heart aflutter with anticipation. Without hesitation, I reached out to Chad, eager to make the most of this newfound freedom. His affirmative response carried the promise of adventure, and within an hour, he arrived at my doorstep with his truck, ready to sweep me away. As we ventured deeper into the rural outskirts of our small city, the boundary between civilization and wilderness blurred. Our surroundings transformed from familiar neighborhoods to the vast expanse of nature. The remote location of our homes made the transition seamless, and it wasn't long before we arrived at the edge of a dense forest. With the truck parked and the tent unpacked, we set out hand in hand, traversing a forest trail that seemed to stretch into infinity. For me, raised in the confines of a religious household, this journey into the woods represented the embodiment of newfound freedom. The rustling leaves and the gentle sway of the trees welcomed us into their ancient embrace, and with each step, my heart danced to the rhythm of liberation. As we reached a secluded clearing, Chad declared it the ideal campsite. I lacked the frame of reference to dispute his choice, as I had never ventured this far into the wilderness before. We settled down, and the prospect of a campfire and a night under the stars beckoned with a sense of romantic adventure that thrilled my soul. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows and illuminating the distant city with an orange haze. But as I looked in the opposite direction, the night sky unveiled itself in its entire splendor, a glittering tapestry of stars. It was a sight I had rarely witnessed, and the sheer beauty of it left me breathless. Chad suggested that we kindle a fire and indulge in a shared meal. Being inexperienced campers, our provisions consisted primarily of junk food, an indulgence we were more than happy to embrace. He had also brought a bottle of vodka, a revelation that filled me with both excitement and trepidation. The forbidden nature of alcohol, strictly prohibited by my parents' beliefs, ignited a sense of recklessness within me. Temptation outweighed caution, and I found myself taking one shot, then another, and yet another. As the alcohol coursed through my veins, a pleasant buzz enveloped me. We reclined in the tent, a makeshift haven beneath the canopy of the forest. Time passed in a blur of laughter and intoxication, leaving us inebriated yet exhilarated. Darkness cloaked the sky, and the stars emerged in all their glory. Chad decided to return to his truck, explaining that he had forgotten his phone and needed to inform his mother of his safe arrival. I agreed and watched as his figure receded into the distance, his footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. The campfire crackled, casting eerie shadows that danced in the darkness. As I stood alone by the dying fire, the notion of retrieving more branches to feed the flames crossed my mind. I ventured further into the woods, my cell phone's flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. The deeper I ventured, the less the feeble light revealed, and the more the forest seemed to encroach upon me. In the distance, I heard rustling, a subtle yet unsettling sound. Instinctively, I called out, assuming it was Chad returning from his truck. "Chad, I'm here," I announced, but there was no response, only the rustling drawing nearer. Despite my rising unease, I pushed the fear aside, convincing myself it was nothing more than a passing animal. I continued my quest for branches to fuel the fire, my steps drawing me further from the campsite. But when my foot slipped on a patch of mud, sending me tumbling to the ground, my world plunged into darkness, and the forest's sinister secrets began to unravel. My family had made Iowa our home since the summer of 2017. Nestled in a quaint neighborhood comprising about 25 houses, we were enveloped by the embrace of an expansive forest. It was a picturesque setting, but it carried with it the shadow of countless horror movies, many of which found their nightmarish settings deep within the heart of a dense, looming forest. Consequently, my paranoia was primed and ready, a sentinel of fear that lurked in the corners of my mind. About a year into our Iowa residency, our beloved family dog, aged and frail, found solace in eternal slumber. In an attempt to ease the void left by our faithful companion, we introduced a new member to the family, a lively and exuberant pup we affectionately named Tucker. With boundless energy and a zest for life, Tucker quickly became a beloved presence in our household. Tragedy struck a few months later when our elder canine friend passed away, leaving Tucker as our sole four-legged companion. It was a poignant moment marked by both grief and the bittersweet knowledge that Tucker now needed us as much as we needed him. Yet life had more changes in store for us. A few years later, my parents' marriage unraveled, leading to their separation. My mother embarked on a new chapter of her life, moving to a residence a few miles from our family home. Despite the shifting dynamics, my parents established a schedule that allowed each of them to spend time with my siblings and me. It was during these visits that my mother introduced us to a road that would etch itself into our memories, an unassuming stretch of pavement flanked by towering trees, a smattering of houses, and a couple of farms. This road, however, harbored secrets that would unsettle even the most resolute of souls. As we navigated this route, winding our way past the trees and houses, an inexplicable sense of unease began to descend upon us. My mother's native heritage came with a belief in the tales of skinwalkers and wendigos. As her gaze roved the landscape, it locked onto something that defied explanation. In the distance, near the edge of the forest that bordered our neighborhood, an anomaly appeared. It was a towering figure, its pallid skin blending with the ashen hues of the woods. But its form was far from human, deer-like hooves served as its unnatural feet. It moved with an eerie grace, its eyes locked on some unfathomable destination within the woods. My mother's confusion and trepidation escalated. She continued along the road, her mind racing to make sense of the unearthly vision before her. However, as she reached a stop sign, she glanced into the rearview mirror only to find nothing but empty space where the enigmatic entity had stood mere moments before. Fear clenched her heart, and she realized with a shiver that she had unwittingly become part of a chilling narrative. The stories of wendigos and skinwalkers, once relegated to folklore, had now woven themselves into the fabric of her reality. Her foot pressed firmly on the gas pedal as she sped toward our home, haunted by the possibility of what she had witnessed. As my mother recounted this unsettling encounter to me, a shiver snaked its way down my spine. The tales of wendigos and skinwalkers that I had heard on YouTube suddenly took on a sinister, tangible form in my mind. The line between myth and reality blurred, leaving me teetering on the precipice of fear. In the wake of this revelation, I found myself consumed by caution whenever I ventured outdoors. The quiet bike rides that once brought me solace now brimmed with anxiety. As I approached the ominous hill near the field, my paranoia took the reins, guiding my actions and heightening my senses. Trusting my instincts, I brought a camera to capture the serene landscape, but my primary focus remained on the periphery, vigilant for any signs of the otherworldly. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. My nightly routine evolved into a dance of survival instincts. As darkness descended, I would methodically close blinds, lock doors, and extinguish lights both inside and out. My senses tingled with the knowledge that I was being watched by unseen eyes, and every nerve in my body remained coiled in anticipation. One fateful night, the very instincts that had kept me safe were put to the test. My faithful companion, Tucker, was outside for his nightly bathroom break. I attached his leash to the porch railing and turned on the outdoor light, illuminating the immediate vicinity. As I busied myself in the kitchen preparing a meal, I heard Tucker's bark pierce the silence. It was not the playful bark I had grown accustomed to, but a frantic, urgent cry. I rushed to the door, my heart pounding in my chest, and flung it open, ready to scold Tucker and bring him inside. His business was done, and his barking could disturb the neighbors. Yet, my words of reproach died on my lips as I stared into the abyss beyond the porch. Tucker was barking at something concealed in the shroud of darkness, something that eluded my vision. My apprehension soared, and I could feel the tendrils of fear wrapping around me. An involuntary shout escaped my lips as I commanded Tucker to come inside, but he remained resolute, his gaze locked onto an unseen presence. Panic churned in my chest as I desperately yanked on the leash, attempting to coax him to safety. Finally, after a moment that felt like an eternity, Tucker yielded to my plea. He darted inside, and I slammed the door shut, sealing us within the safety of the house. With trembling hands, I switched off the porch light and cast a shroud of darkness over the exterior. I hastened to secure every door and window, my mind racing to cover any potential vantage points. The night had taken on a sinister hue, and I could feel unseen eyes fixed upon me. Tucker, released from his leash, bolted downstairs into the basement, seeking refuge from the unseen menace that lurked beyond our walls. I retrieved my meal and descended to the basement, keeping a watchful eye on my vigilant companion. 2 months had passed since that harrowing night, and my life had been irrevocably altered. My routines now revolved around a heightened awareness of the encroaching darkness. As night descended, I would methodically close blinds, lock doors, and extinguish lights. When venturing outdoors, I clung to the safety of a group or the reassurance of a weapon. The sense of dread persisted, an unrelenting shadow that loomed over my existence. What I had glimpsed, I could not fathom. Its motives remained a mystery, its presence a haunting enigma. I yearned for answers, for respite from the fear that clung to me like a second skin. Yet, as the nights in Iowa wore on, the secrets of the forest continued to elude me, leaving me in a state of perpetual unease. I was a 17-year-old navigating the trials and tribulations of high school in the picturesque state of Utah. My parents' house was situated in a quaint and isolated small town, far from the bustling city lights. It was a place where the backyard stretched endlessly into open fields, which, in turn, extended toward the distant mountains. Civilization seemed miles away, almost like an afterthought. My closest companion in this tranquil setting was my best friend, who resided next door. Our houses shared a unique connection, a vast, open field that stretched as our mutual backyard. However, there was something peculiar about his house. It stood on a different street, an unfinished cul-de-sac that should have housed more residences, but, for reasons unknown, remained vacant. Little did we know this detail would play a significant role in the events that would unfold. My teenage years were marked by a less than harmonious relationship with my parents. Consequently, I found refuge at my friend's house, spending countless nights there. It wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was a sanctuary from the tension that permeated my own home. Yet, amid the adolescent camaraderie and late-night gaming sessions, our peaceful haven was periodically disrupted by eerie disturbances. On nights when the moon hung high in the sky, we would be roused from our slumber by strange sounds emanating from the back porch. The night's tranquility shattered by an unsettling symphony of dragging noises and a peculiar, almost inhuman gargling. These disconcerting incidents punctuated our lives, occurring several times each month. However, whenever we mustered the courage to investigate, we were met with emptiness, a silence that seemed to mock our unease. Years passed, and the unexplained phenomena persisted. My friend's impending move was a bittersweet reminder of our shared history. On one such night, as we prepared for his departure, we decided to embark on a nocturnal drive, a musical odyssey that would serve as a farewell to the familiar surroundings. We ventured into the abyss in his trusty truck, the high beams cutting through the darkness like a knife. Our destination was the field, a makeshift roundabout to savor the music and the moment. But it was in that inky blackness that our lives would forever change. As the high beams pierced the obscurity and illuminated the empty expanse, our ordinary night was abruptly consumed by the extraordinary. It was there, bathed in the stark light, that we witnessed it, a creature, if it could be called that. a being that defied all reason and sanity. Naked and grotesque, it moved on all fours, its limbs twisted and elongated in an unnatural contortion. Its pallid skin clung to its emaciated frame as if stretched beyond its limits. Yet, it was the visage that left an indelible mark upon our psyches. Its mouth hung agape, a gaping more reminiscent of a serpent unhinging its jaw to swallow its prey. In the harsh light, its obsidian eyes gleamed with an otherworldly malevolence. Our gazes locked with the abomination, and it swiveled its head to face us. In an instant, it scurried backward, moving in reverse as though someone had pressed the rewind button on a grotesque nightmare. It vanished into the overgrown brush of the field. In the wake of this unearthly encounter, my friend and I sat in stunned silence. The blood drained from our faces, and our breath hung heavy in the night air. We exchanged a furtive, trembling glance, each silently asking the other, "Did you see that too?" We were shaken to our cores, the foundations of our reality irrevocably shaken. With trembling hands, we decided to return to his basement room where we would try to find solace in the familiarity of video games and movies. But our hearts were heavy with the knowledge that we had borne witness to something beyond comprehension. As the night wore on, we waited in the dimly lit room, our senses heightened and our nerves stretched to their limits. We clutched firearms, a futile attempt to ward off the encroaching dread that permeated the air. We hoped to hear the dragging sounds and the haunting gargles once more, if only to prove that what we had seen was not a fevered hallucination. But the night remained eerily silent. The entity, whatever it was, had retreated into the shadows, leaving us with an enduring sense of foreboding. I no longer reside in that small town, but the memories of that empty field linger like a specter. Whenever I return, I am acutely aware of the land's silent vigilance, as if it waits and watches its secrets hidden beneath the shroud of darkness. Whatever dwells in those uncharted depths remains an enigma, a presence that defies explanation. As I reflect upon that fateful night, I can't help but wonder if it still lingers, concealed within the very fabric of that desolate landscape. Late into a moonless night, we embarked on a journey to the depths of northern New Jersey. The decision to visit a friend of my friend's mom, who resided in the heart of the densely wooded landscape, was a peculiar one, and it filled me with a sense of anticipation mingled with unease. As the clock neared 1 a.m., we found ourselves navigating winding roads shrouded in darkness. The high beams of our friend's mom's SUV cast an eerie, almost ethereal glow, illuminating the dense foliage on either side of the road. Shadows danced in the periphery of our vision, and the silence of the woods pressed in around us, creating an atmosphere that seemed surreal. My attention was drawn to a peculiar sight. A figure, swift and unnatural, moved alongside the vehicle. Its presence struck me as profoundly odd, for it was running at a pace that defied the capabilities of any known animal. We were hurtling down the road at a speed of approximately 45 miles per hour, and yet this entity kept pace effortlessly. Intrigued and bewildered, I strained my eyes to get a clearer view. The brief moment in which I observed it left an indelible impression. It appeared to be a human form, moving with an uncanny grace on all fours. However, one detail chilled me to the bone. Its skin was as pale as death, a ghostly gray that seemed to shimmer in the eerie light. The enigmatic figure remained on the right side of the vehicle for but a fleeting instant. Then, in an astonishing display, it leaped over the car, vanishing into the shadows on the left side of the road. Its movement defied all reason, as though gravity held no sway over its unnatural form. To this day, the memory haunts me, an unsolved riddle that defies conventional explanation. In my search for answers, I stumbled upon a reference to a creature known as the Skinwalker. It was a revelation that sent shivers down my spine, for the description of this entity bore a disturbing resemblance to the enigmatic figure I had encountered. But whether it was indeed a skinwalker or some other inexplicable manifestation of the supernatural, I may never know. The encounter had left me with more questions than answers, and its memory lingers like a ghostly whisper in the depths of my mind. In the aftermath of that night, I embarked on a journey of investigation and exploration. I delved into the folklore and legends of the region, seeking any hints or clues that might shed light on the mysterious encounter. Yet, the more I delved, the deeper the mystery seemed to grow. I found myself drawn to the stories and accounts of those who had encountered similar entities, these enigmatic beings that existed on the fringes of human understanding. Their tales spoke of creatures that defied the laws of nature, beings that moved between the realms of the mundane and the supernatural. As I immersed myself in these accounts, I became acutely aware of the profound impact that such encounters had on those who experienced them. The witnesses spoke of an unsettling sense of dread, a feeling that the fabric of reality itself had been torn asunder. Nightmares plagued their sleep, and a constant unease lingered in the back of their minds. It was during this period of research that I stumbled upon a story that sent a chill down my spine. It was a tale of a relentless pursuit, a relentless chase through the inky depths of the night. In this account, the witness described a harrowing experience that bore uncanny similarities to my own. They had been traveling through the wilderness, much like we had, when they encountered a figure that defied all reason. It moved with an unnatural swiftness, pursuing them relentlessly, its bony fingers reaching out to claim its prey. The witness spoke of the fear that gripped them, the desperate flight through the darkness, and the sensation of an unseen force closing in around them. It was a tale of terror and survival, a testament to the enduring legacy of these enigmatic entities. As I read those words, I couldn't help but wonder if the encounter I had witnessed that fateful night was part of a larger pattern, a recurring phenomenon that defied explanation. The mere thought sent shivers down my spine, for it hinted at a reality far stranger and more unsettling than anything I had ever imagined. In the depths of the night, as the echoes of that encounter reverberated in my mind, I knew that the mysteries of the supernatural world were vast and inscrutable. And though I may never uncover the truth behind that enigmatic figure, the memory of that night would forever linger, a haunting reminder that the boundaries of reality are far more porous than we dare to imagine. Late fall in northern Canada can be unforgiving. The wilderness, once vibrant with life, now succumbs to the encroaching chill as winter draws near. It was in this stark, desolate landscape that my father, my eldest brother, and I embarked on a hunting expedition seeking the elusive moose that roamed these remote woods. We left our camp in the early morning, the darkness shrouding the forest just before sunrise. Our journey took us through winding rivers and treacherous rapids, a relentless test of our resolve. The day wore on, and we pushed ourselves to cover as much distance as possible, knowing that nightfall in the wilderness held its own dangers. By midday, we decided to set up camp just over halfway to our intended destination. My father, a seasoned outdoorsman, believed it would be best to conserve our energy for the challenges that lay ahead on the morrow. So we gathered firewood, pitched our tents, and kindled a campfire, its flames dancing in the gathering dusk. As night descended upon our wilderness enclave, we gathered around the campfire, its warm glow pushing back the encroaching darkness. The northern stars emerged overhead, pinpricks of light in the vast expanse, as we shared stories and laughter. It was a moment of respite, a brief respite from the harshness of our surroundings. However, fate often has a peculiar sense of timing. It was a simple request, an innocent query from my part that would shatter the tranquility of the night. As I glanced at my brother and father, the firelight flickering in their eyes, I couldn't resist the urge to tease. "Remember," I chuckled, "when we get there, don't talk about Skinwalkers. Talking about them gives the power, and I'd rather not risk us getting eaten by cryptids." My jest was met with laughter, the flickering flames casting eerie shadows on their faces. The legends of the Skinwalkers were a part of our upbringing, tales to be told around campfires, a nod to the superstitions that often accompanied life in the wilderness. However, little did we know that the ancient woods held secrets far more unsettling than mere folklore. As I ventured away from the campfire's warm embrace to gather firewood, a strange sensation overcame me. The forest, silent as death, seemed to watch and listen with rapt attention. I took a few steps further, my footsteps hushed by the fallen leaves, and found a secluded spot by the river's edge to relieve myself. The sound of rustling leaves and twigs reached my ears, emanating from the dense thicket just beyond. I froze every nerve in my body on high alert. A peculiar sensation, a feeling that something was profoundly amiss, washed over me. The air grew heavy, suffused with an unpleasant stench like the sickly odor of curdled milk or rotting food. My gaze remained fixed on the spot where the sounds had originated. It was there that I witnessed something that defied reason and unleashed an icy grip of terror upon my heart. The trees before me began to shift, to morph and twist, gradually taking on the form of a grotesque head with subtle facial features. In the darkness, my eyes adjusted and I discerned the presence of something malevolent. A voice, barely more than a whisper, seemed to emanate from the depths of the forest, an eerie and unsettling call. "Hello," it murmured, sending shivers down my spine. "I've missed you. Come see me." Despite the strangeness of the situation, I found myself taking a tentative step forward, compelled by an unseen force. My curiosity piqued. The voices of my relatives behind me had fallen silent, their faces etched with confusion and concern. Then the unimaginable occurred. Their expressions shifted, their smiles replaced by an eerie and unnatural stillness. Their skin grew pallid, as if drained of life, and chunks of flesh began to fall from their cheeks. Panic and fear clawed at me, my body paralyzed by the surreal horror unfolding before my eyes. In the dim light, I retreated, my fear surging like a torrent. I struggled to comprehend the grotesque transformation of my loved ones, their faces marred by a gruesome decay. It defied all reason and logic, plunging me into a nightmarish abyss. A surge of primal terror coursed through me, and I turned to flee, my heart pounding with dread. But as I looked back one last time, I was confronted by a sight so grotesque and horrifying that it haunts my dreams to this day. There, emerging from the shadows, stood a creature. Its form was a nightmarish amalgamation of rotted flesh and exposed bone, its eyes sunken hollows, and its chest cavity a gaping void. It was emaciated, skeletal, and grotesque in its deformity. With a newfound surge of strength, I turned and fled, my voice choked by fear. I tried to scream for help, but my cries emerged as feeble rasps, barely audible over the cacophony of terror that enveloped me. The relentless pursuit of the creature echoed through the night, its heavy breaths and stomping feet a menacing crescendo. I raced along the riverbank, my breaths ragged, until I could feel its bony fingers clutching at my leg as I jumped desperately for higher ground. My brother, awakened by my raspy cries and the chaotic commotion, rushed to my aid. With a strength born of desperation, he yanked me free from the creature's grasp, pulling me to safety and back to the campfire's flickering embrace. As we huddled together, gasping for breath and trembling with fear, I recounted the horrifying ordeal. My brother's confirmation of having witnessed the same grotesque entity validated the terrifying reality of what we had experienced. We spent the night by the campfire, rifles clutched tightly in our trembling hands. The forest around us seemed to pulsate with malevolent energy, and we dared not close our eyes, fearing what might lurk in the shadows. With the first light of dawn, we wasted no time in packing our belongings and leaving the accursed place behind. Our journey home was silent, the weight of our shared terror too heavy for words. We never shared our harrowing encounter with anyone, for fear of being labeled as madmen or liars. In the aftermath of that night, I became plagued by nightmares, unable to sleep for months. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision, figures lurked outside my window, and whispers haunted my solitude. Desperate for relief, I sought the counsel of a medicine man, a shaman, who performed ceremonies to cleanse my spirit. Yet, the specter of that night remained, a relentless presence that clung to me like a parasite. Friends offered protection pouches and crystals, but the fear persisted, a constant companion whenever I ventured into the wild. My love for the outdoors became tainted by an ever-present sense of unease, my guard perpetually raised and my back pressed against the safety of solid ground. The encounter had changed me, left an indelible mark upon my psyche, and shattered the illusions of childhood. I had learned that some legends were not mere tales, but living nightmares lurking in the darkest corners of the world. The desert expanse stretched out before us, a vast, arid wilderness that seemed untouched by the passage of time. We had chosen Joshua Tree as our vacation destination, a place of natural beauty and tranquility, or so we thought. Little did we know that the silence of the desert held secrets, ancient and unfathomable. My girlfriend and I had packed our bags with enthusiasm, looking forward to days of exploration beneath the relentless sun and nights beneath a canopy of stars. However, as we prepared to embark on our adventure, I couldn't resist a playful warning. Remember, I teased, when we get there, don't talk about skinwalkers. Talking about them gives the power, and I'd rather not risk us getting eaten by cryptids. She laughed heartily at my jest, and we continued our preparations, filling our bags with supplies and readying ourselves for the journey ahead. Our chosen accommodations were a remote cabin nestled in the heart of the desert, far from the conveniences of civilization. It was a place of solitude and serenity, with no other houses around for at least a mile, offering us the promise of a perfectly dark night sky. Our days in Joshua Tree passed uneventfully as we explored the rugged terrain and marveled at the stark beauty of the desert landscape. The sun's relentless heat bore down upon us, making each shadowy crevice and jutting rock seem like a mirage. One evening, with the sky ablaze in fiery hues as the sun dipped below the horizon, we decided to make a campfire. We gathered wood, arranged it carefully, and ignited the flames. As the fire crackled and danced, we settled into a comfortable rhythm, sipping drinks and roasting marshmallows. It was a moment of peace, a communion with nature that felt almost sacred. The desert silence enveloped us, broken only by the haunting howl of the wind as it whispered secrets across the vast plains. The flames of our campfire cast eerie, flickering shadows upon the sand and rocks. There was an almost palpable tension in the air, as if the desert itself held its breath, awaiting some unknown revelation. It was then that my girlfriend's mischievous grin betrayed her intentions. So she began, mischief glinting in her eyes, "Tell me about the legend of skinwalkers." I stared at her for a moment, taken aback by her request. My earlier warning had been nothing more than playful banter, a nod to the superstitions that sometimes accompanied remote desert living. But as I opened my mouth to speak, I felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere. A chorus of howls erupted from the distance, their mournful wails reverberating through the desert night. It was no ordinary coyote howl. This sounded different, filled with a deep, agonizing sorrow, like a lament for something irrevocably lost. We froze, our gazes locked in a moment of shared unease. The timing was uncanny, as if the desert itself had responded to our words with a chilling reminder of its secrets. My girlfriend's face paled and the mirth drained from her eyes. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I had no answer. Fear clutched at my heart, and I could feel the weight of something ancient and malevolent pressing down upon us. In that moment, the playful conversation had transformed into a chilling reality, and I regretted ever uttering the name of the cryptid. Without a word, we extinguished the campfire, the crackling flames snuffed out in an instant. With haste born of primal instinct, we gathered our belongings and retreated to the safety of the cabin. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, punctuated by creaks and groans that echoed through the cabin's wooden frame. We lay side by side in our shared dread, sleep eluding us. The memory of those mournful howls haunted our thoughts, a reminder of the unseen forces that dwelled in the desert's depths. In the silent hours of the night, we could only wonder what secrets the ancient land held and what dark entities might roam beneath the stars. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, we exchanged a weary glance, knowing that our peaceful vacation had been forever marred by the inexplicable events of that night. The legends of the Skinwalkers, once dismissed as mere folklore, had taken on a chilling reality, a presence lurking in the shadowy corners of the desert, waiting to reveal itself to those who dared to speak its name. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket buzzed overhead, casting an artificial glow upon the seemingly endless aisles of groceries. It was a mundane Tuesday evening, and I was on the late shift, working diligently amidst the towering shelves, restocking and organizing the goods. My boyfriend, Dave, who worked in a nearby department, would join me for our routine late-night grocery shopping escapade at 10:30. Our small town in Central Valley, California, had its peculiar charm. The supermarket, much to our convenience, remained open until midnight, catering to the night owls and those who preferred their grocery shopping without the crowds of the daytime. As the digital clock on the wall chimed 10, I received a quick text from Dave confirming our plan. With a nod to my manager, I made my way to the checkout counter, preparing to leave my work behind for a short while. The chill of the night greeted us as we stepped out of the brightly lit store, pushing our shopping cart filled with essentials and a few indulgent snacks. Our route home was punctuated by a series of shortcuts through the town's quiet streets, affectionately referred to as the cuts by the locals. These paths, hidden from the main road, were our secret routes winding through the dimly lit alleys of familiar houses and overgrown shrubbery. Tonight, as we ambled along the familiar route, the atmosphere held an unusual sense of anticipation, as if the night itself held secrets waiting to unfurl. The air was crisp and filled with the earthy scent of autumn leaves, creating an ambience that hinted at the supernatural. Our conversation had just shifted to the subject of the peculiar and the unexplained when it happened. A silhouette darted across the road ahead of us, momentarily stealing our words. The figure was slender, yet its body seemed oddly muscular, an incongruity that immediately caught our attention. Its erratic movements defied human gait, resembling more the predatory grace of a wild animal. My heart quickened as I fumbled for the flashlight on my keychain, struggling to illuminate the enigmatic figure before us. Dave's grip tightened on the shopping cart, a silent acknowledgement of the unsettling sight before us. The beam of light revealed a creature both grotesque and surreal. This was no human being, nor any known animal native to Central Valley. Its sinewy legs, impossibly thin, were adorned with hair and fur that ran in a grotesque cascade down to its calves. With each fluid stride, its limbs stretched and contracted, the muscles beneath the hairy pelt rippling with an unnatural vitality. The sight was incomprehensible. We watched in a stupefied daze, our rational minds struggling to process the aberration before us. It moved with an eerie fluidity, a creature at home in the shadows of the night. The road curved, and as we followed its path, our flashlight beams intersected, revealing the creature's eerie path into the darkness. It was headed for the orchard, an expansive sea of gnarled trees with leafless branches that sprawled out like the skeletal fingers of a desolate giant. It was as if the creature's destination was the very heart of the foreboding orchard, its course unhindered by the arid ground and twisted tree roots. As it vanished among the orchard's spectral silhouettes, the sense of disquiet settled over us, leaving our words unspoken. Silence reigned for a moment, punctuated only by our anxious breaths mingling with the night air. Finally, Dave's voice broke the spell, a whisper filled with disbelief. What the hell was that?" I shook my head, unable to conjure any explanation. "I don't know, Dave. I've never seen anything like it. It was like something from a nightmare." He nodded, and in that shared gesture, we acknowledged the impossibility of what we had witnessed. Neither human nor animal, the creature defied any rational explanation. The only certainty was that the memory of that unsettling encounter would linger long after this night. Weeks later, as curiosity gnawed at me, I decided to share our bizarre experience with my friend, Sarah. Her reaction was unlike any I had anticipated. She turned pale, her eyes filled with dread, and her voice quivered as she uttered just one word: Wendigo. The name sent a shiver down my spine, evoking memories of ominous tales and warnings shared by the native tribes in our region. The Wendigo, a creature of legend, was believed to embody malevolence and hunger, an entity that defied the laws of nature and preyed upon those who dared to venture too close to its domain. As Sarah explained the implications of what we had seen, the pieces of a haunting puzzle fell into place. The Wendigo, a cryptid of dread and despair, had crossed our path that night. Its menacing presence was a dark omen, a reminder of the hidden terrors lurking in the heart of the Central Valley. We lived our lives as best we could, but the knowledge that we had glimpsed the unimaginable weighed heavily on our souls. The encounter had been an unsettling reminder that in the quiet corners of the world, amidst the ordinary, the extraordinary could rise and reality could fracture, revealing a nightmare beneath the surface. Our once peaceful town was now tainted by the lingering shadow of the Wendigo, and the memory of that night would forever haunt our steps, a testament to the inexplicable mysteries that dwelled in the heart of the Central Valley, California. The inky blackness of the New Mexican night enveloped me as I embarked on my journey from Arizona to Durango, Colorado. Midnight's oppressive veil pressed upon my weary frame, coaxing my heavy eyelids to surrender to the siren song of slumber. Battling fatigue, I heeded the call of exhaustion and veered off the desolate highway, finding a momentary refuge just outside the town of Shiprock, New Mexico. It was a decision that would forever haunt my restless nights. An hour passed, marked by fitful dreams that danced upon the precipice of nightmares. In their throes, malevolent faces swirled, bathed in the searing glow of vivid colors that assaulted my senses. They bore down upon me from all directions, closing in with a menacing fervor. Panic seized my heart, and with a gasping start, I jolted awake. The ethereal residue of the dream lingered, its spectral fingers reaching out to touch the recesses of my mind. Desperate to escape its spectral clutches, I fumbled for the ignition, setting my car ablaze with a wash of halogen light. But the illumination of reason did little to dispel the gnawing unease that now clung to my soul. As the beam of my headlights pierced the enveloping darkness, it revealed an eerie tableau etched into the fabric of the desert night. Near 10 feet from my trembling vehicle, a pair of otherworldly witnesses bore silent witness to my nocturnal ordeal. A coyote, its eyes twin, orbs of gleaming malice, and a jackrabbit, its normally skittish form as motionless as death, sat in eerie stillness. Their unblinking gaze bore into me, tendrils of dread slithering through my being. In that moment, I was not merely an observer of the bizarre, I was a player in a haunting drama that transcended the boundaries of reason. Unnerved to my core, I recognized the unspoken connection that bound me to the cryptic scene. I was an intruder in a world that defied the laws of reality. Terrified and driven by an instinct honed through millennia of survival, I slammed my foot upon the accelerator, leaving the sinister duo behind in a cloud of dust and gravel. The tires screeched in protest as I fled, a primal force propelling me away from the ungodly communion I had witnessed. Years later, my life was intertwined with that of a Navajo woman. As love blossomed between us, I felt compelled to recount the haunting encounter from that fateful night outside Shiprock. The memory, long repressed, clawed its way back to the surface, its tendrils of dread intertwining with my present reality. As the words escaped my lips and took shape in the still air, her visage contorted with distress. Her eyes, pools of sorrow and apprehension, regarded me with a mixture of fear and sadness. It was a reaction that caught me off guard, the depth of her emotions a testament to the gravity of the tale. In hushed tones, she implored me never speak of it again. Her voice, normally filled with warmth, quivered with a chilling undercurrent. It was as though her words were a desperate plea, a prayer to seal away the malevolent secrets that lurked within the tale. Yet, the unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. She, more than anyone, understood the ominous implications of my experience. Her roots were deeply entrenched in the Navajo culture, a world where the border between the corporeal and the supernatural was perilously thin. The enigmatic encounter was a harbinger of a realm fraught with peril, a place where reality and the unknown converged with unsettling ease. Its ominous presence loomed, casting a shadow over our burgeoning love, a shadow that could not be ignored. In time, the memory of that haunting night would fade into the recesses of my mind, eclipsed by the joys and tribulations of life. Yet, I could never fully escape the lingering specter of the Navajo reservation, where the line between the mundane and the supernatural blurred, and the whispers of the desert wind carried untold secrets.